Hey guys, Anders here. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be going over multiple different topics. We'll be going over the fact that they've actually disabled some of the new portal weapons they've added to the game, and we'll of course be going over the most recent Battlefield podcast. As always, if you enjoy these types of videos, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Join the Discord, link is in the description, and I stream every single day at twitch.tv/enders. The next tournament for Gundam Evolution will be February 4th, and the next $20,000 tournament will be March 25th. I'll be streaming both of those. Don't miss the action on that. So first, I want to mention something that I find to be very funny. Some of you might remember a few days ago, I uploaded a video called Battlefield 2042's new 1942 weapons are bugged, but the new mode is good. And in that video, I talk about how some of the Battlefield 1942 portal weapons that they added have misaligned sights. And since then, DICE has actually disabled all the weapons that have misaligned sights. And I'm not taking credit for DICE disabling these weapons at all. I just think it's funny that DICE adds things and then has to disable them later because they're too lazy to make sure everything's on the up and up with them. Now, the main portion of this video is going to be going over the Inside Battlefield Episode 1 podcast, and this is a podcast that they, I guess, are going to start doing regularly, maybe not with every update, but with every important update or maybe every new season. And in the first episode, they reiterated a lot of the same things that they've already said with the Battlefield 2042 class update and all that stuff, but there are some very interesting new details within this podcast that are potentially extremely problematic. The first episode of their podcast is around 55 minutes long. If you have not listened to it and would like to listen to it in its entirety, I will link it in the description down below. Now, on to the first interesting thing that they mentioned in this new podcast. They mentioned that RAW is actually getting buffed, if you can believe that. RAW is, in my opinion, and I'm sure if you watch the channel for a long time, RAW is, in my opinion, one of the most overpowered specialists in the game anyway, because he's one of the lowest effort and highest effect specialists in the entire game. But for some reason, DICE felt that he needed to be buffed, and now any vehicle that is hacked by RAW can now also be locked onto, and that is the wording they used in the podcast, and I can only assume that means it'll act like a SOFLAM lock, which means that it's essentially painted through the map, and all launchers should be able to lock onto it, meaning recoilless rifles that weren't able to lock onto things that were hacked previously. And let's get one thing very straight here. RAW was overpowered before this potential buff, and now this just pushes him over the edge of complete insanity because as an individual player, RAW could already basically decrease vehicle effectiveness by 50% or more just by being a total rat and staring at a vehicle in the sky for roughly 2 seconds and then holding mouse 1. Now, on top of RAW disabling your countermeasures and weapons from across the map with extremely minimal effort, you will now be locked onto by recoilless rifles that you weren't necessarily being locked onto by before. Moving on from that topic, some other things that were confirmed within this podcast. The Assault class will now have 1 med pen instead of the, I think, available 3 right now, and Armor is an Assault exclusive gadget. I know a lot of people don't like armor in Battlefield 2042 to begin with, and I think the Assault class having the exclusive ability to have armor is only going to make people more annoyed because that means that you're going to be fighting a McKay with armor and a med pen pretty much all the time now. But let's talk about another class in Battlefield 2042. The Engineer class. So with this new class update coming later this month, the Engineer class is going to have exclusive access to all the launchers in the game, meaning the Recoilless, the Stinger, and the new Javelin that will be added within the class system update as well. Mentioned within this podcast, they are alluding to the fact that they're actually going to be buffing the launchers in Battlefield 2042. Now, I understand that this has been something that Battlefield players have been asking for since the launch of the game, but I don't agree with it at all, because I think the launchers right now are actually completely fine, especially the Stinger. The Stinger is completely fine, and almost one-shots Nightbirds. So I'm not entirely sure how they're going to buff the Stinger, but the Recoilless and I guess the Javelin are the more problematic of that when it comes to buffs, because I don't necessarily think tanks are going to be able to play the game anymore, especially considering the new RAW buff, which I mentioned earlier. Imagine if you hack a tank, that's going to be, PLD'd across the entire map, and then there's going to be Javelins and Recoillesses and List missiles and all that stuff. The tank only has 1 charge of APS, so if you're increasing the damage of all of these launchers on top of making RAW stronger, I just don't understand how some of these vehicles are actually going to survive against all of this. And DICE's reasoning for this buff is the way Battlefield 2042 is right now, every single person can have a launcher. So they thought that naturally they just had to lower the damage because theoretically there could have been 32 or 64 even launchers on the same team. Every single person could have one. Now that they're exclusive to the engineer class, their sort of thought process is, okay, now we have to buff them because less people will have them. But I don't necessarily think that is actually going to be the case, because Battlefield players love to kill vehicles, right? That's a thing that's been happening since the dawn of Battlefield's creation. People love to run dedicated tank squads, and I don't necessarily think that restricting launchers to the engineer class will result in an overall lower number of launchers per team, which means you have to buff the damage of them. I think there's going to be the same, if not more amount of launchers per team now. So, two very strange decisions in my opinion, the RAW buff and the launcher buff. We'll have to see how that plays out. I do not anticipate it will play out well, if I had to be honest with you. I think this is only going to throw balance off even more than it already is thrown off. And I think vehicles, even with new turret speeds and APS, won't be able to actually fend off the sheer amount of hatred that is being slinged toward them. And just finally, some smaller things to mention. Crawford's current trait, Cash Point, is moving to Irish, and Crawford's repair tool trait will now be able to repair any vehicle or gadget which is below 25% health twice as fast. The mounted Vulcan stationary minigun will also actually do a bit of damage to vehicles, even tanks. So that's going to be pretty funny. Hopefully we can get like a squad of 8 people and just minigun a tank to death. I don't anticipate the minigun will actually do a ton of damage, but in numbers it's going to ramp up, and it might just be devastating like the railgun was in numbers. But all in all, guys, it looks like the next Battlefield update is absolutely going to be the most game-changing update Battlefield 2042 has received thus far. The class system, the breakaway rework, all this sort of new gameplay elements, right? Like, we haven't played Battlefield 2042 with a class system yet. It's going to be totally different. So, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts down below, of course. Join the Discord, follow me on Twitch, stream every single day. I stream tournaments when I'm playing in those as well. So if you want to see some competitive action and some great Battlefield gameplay, follow my Twitch. I'll see you guys there, hopefully. Peace.